Hi guys, I'm Ryan. I love spooky, creepy, mysterious stories, even though I'm also the kind of person who gets scared just by turning off the lights. So I thought, if I'm gonna suffer, might as well bring you along with me. I scour Reddit and other dark corners of the internet to find the most bone-chilling stories I can. Feel free to watch this while eating, before bed, or just leave it playing in the background while you work. Alright, enough rambling. Let's get started.
What the hell is even that?
In today's video, we're diving into ghost stories, legends, and supernatural encounters related to Native Americans, all shared by users online. Uktena. It's a legend about a horned snake in Tsalagi, Cherokee legend. Uktena is said to be very large and round like a tree trunk, with horns on his head. The only way to wound him is to shoot at a singular spot on his forehead that emits bright light. It's similar to a diamond. If you defeat Uktena, you become a miracle worker, a great warrior. Yet, once you see the light of his forehead, you run toward it instead of trying to escape. Even to see Uktena sleeping is death. Not to the hunter, but to his family. I'm Cherokee, and growing up, the Uktena, horned serpent, really freaked me out. The mountain my family lived on has these mysterious glowing lights that, according to legend, was from the Uktena trying to trick people into finding it. There is also Spearfinger, an old lady who can transform into your loved ones and eat your liver. My tribe talks about a beast called, rough translation here, the Flame Walker, spirits who take the form of a small blue flame that leads people into the swamps and bogs, where they eventually drown or otherwise vanish. Yes, they are basically will-o-wisps. Another are the WaterFace Hunters, again rough translation, and I am not heavily involved with my tribe these days. These creatures have a face that acts like a pool of water, reflecting the face of anyone who looks them in the eyes. They mercilessly hunt down the people who acknowledge them. The only way to avoid them is to not speak to, or others interact with a stranger unless you can see their face from the corner of your eye. We also have the more traditional Skinwalker type legends, as well the Bogmen. My tribe is considered part of the Abenaki, but are actually a smaller sub-tribe. Basically, when it came down to it, there were not enough of the tribe to actually be considered a tribe anymore. Today, we number fewer than 200, and only 8 of those are more than half-blooded. My bio father and his brother, as well as my paternal grandparents, are the last 4 full-blooded of my tribe. Dean from northern British Columbia here. My mom used to always tell me stories of the Nehgunni, or Bushmen/wildmen when I was young. They were people who lived in the forest and took away people who wandered too far out, specifically children. I always figured these stories were created by my people to serve 2 purposes. First, to teach young children to not wander far off, and second, to give explanations to kidnappings done by other tribes, which was a fairly common occurrence even up until the early to mid-20th century. My grandmother's brother was taken by Cree from Alberta and raised by them. They had assumed he had died until decades later when they were reunited and learned what had happened. That owls are a sign of death. My mom won't let anything that has to do with owls in her house because of it. I work with owls and I've met people who have this fear. It seems to be a very common superstition. It's usually the witch who turns into an owl or has evil owl assistants to do her dirty work. Or that if you see/hear an owl, it means someone in your home will die. Unfortunately, this means there's a lot of persecution of owls, whether it's from bored teenagers shooting them because of the legends or actually fearful older folks who trap or poison them. I like to show people our owls, because sometimes they will be at first a bit aghast and then warm up to them when I explain their appearance and behavior. My favorite was this older grandma who came with her family. She didn't speak English and literally clutched her shawl in fear when she saw me holding a barn owl. But I used my phone to translate and told her about the owl and what his name was, and let her pet one of his very soft shed feathers. And at the end she was smiling and calling him a good owl. When the humans slept, dogs would get together and party, but not before taking their tails off. They'd dance the entire night, put their tails back on and return home. But one time a coyote found them and all the dogs had to scramble away to their homes for safety, but a lot of them grabbed the wrong tail. They never danced again at night because they were afraid of the coyote, so they were stuck with weird mismatched tails for the rest of their lives. You forgot the part where this is the reason that dogs sniff each other's asses LOL to see if the other dog has their tail. We have a spirit similar in Aboriginal culture. It's called a Mimi spirit. Basically, when you go walk about the spirit day or night, will try and trick you into following it. It will appear, you walk to it, and it's vanished. It will appear again, you again follow it for it to disappear. Repeat this multiple times and you are lost forever. I was 7 when I first actually met an elder whose son was taken by the Mimi spirit. You'll never forget her broken face when she told my class. I don't really know any actual stories well enough to tell, but I know the rules. 1. If you hear someone you know calling your name, but you also know they are not supposed to be there, don't respond. Especially if they are out of sight and insisting you come to them. 2. Always play group games in counterclockwise order, otherwise you're playing with the dead. 2.5 Also don't eat in the dark. This is considered inviting the dead to eat with you. If you can extend your hand all the way out and still see it clearly, then you're fine. 3. Don't play card games past midnight. If you do and someone knocks at the door, don't answer it. Try not to drop your cards. If you do, then don't bend down to pick them up, or you will see hooves under the table. That's bad. 4. Say thank you after meals, even if you're the one that made it. Even better if you say it in native tongue. If someone finishes their meal and says thank you, you say you're welcome, even if you didn't give it to them. Even better in native tongue. 5. Don't try to contact spirits, especially with board games. This is not a tribe custom. It's more of an unspoken common sense among the res people. 6. After someone dies, you should gather family as quickly as possible to have feasts for 10 days. The first dinner is large, then every meal after that is smaller feasts meant for portions of the family to come at different times to help. The last feast on the 10-day is the closing dinner, which is the largest, with the entire family expected to show up and help. For every meal of these 10 days, put out a plate of the deceased's favorite foods first. Contrary to Rule 4, you do not say thank you at any time during these 10 days. This is because it is believed that it takes the dead 10 days to relive their lives before they pass on. So this is your last chance to eat with them. 7. If a bird flies into your house, someone's going to die. 8. Pregnant woman should not hold any child that isn't theirs. 9. It's accepted that if you actually try to curse someone, literally going through all of the steps with the intention of harm, not in accidentally wishing them bad luck, then your family will also be cursed horribly. 10. If you play with fire, you'll wet the bed. Another one I heard is to not look outside the window at night if possible. A hooded figure with no face sometimes will look back at you. I feel like I may be late, but I have a lot of Aboriginal myths. Most are old tales that involve magic or giants, taking animals. Cunning ravens, the birth of the Tli Cho people. But more sinister of tales, the Nagha, the Aboriginal version of Bigfoot. I also know of an Inuktitut take about witches that live under the ocean called the Qallipiliut. I'm a Northern Canadian with an Aboriginal father and a white mother. The tales I heard were either from teachers, grandparents, or friends who have embraced their culture. Yamoria and Yamogha, the giant twins. Now I can't honestly remember too many stories on these brothers, but there are landmarks all around the territory I live in that is exhibited as proof they were alive. In the middle of the Mackenzie River, biggest river in the NWT, there is a large stone sticking out of the river which looks like the petrified guts of a beaver. There is a giant branchless, leafless tree sticking out of the top of this stone. It is said that Yamogha had hunted a giant beaver and gutted him there in the river. He used his spear to anchor down the cuts so fish may feed on them. They are still there to this day. Yamoria's body can be seen laying down. It is essentially a mountain range that looks like a giant human laying on his back, completely with face and feet. This can be seen from the peak of the hill as you enter a town called Foot Liard, the southwesternmost town in the NWT. I guess I'll start with a light-hearted one. Some of them are fairly long, so I'll go by request. The raven used to be able to speak to humans. He also used to be very colorful. He also liked to play tricks on the other animals. The raven never had to feed itself. It could convince or trick any animal into giving him food. Eventually, after thousands of years of the ravens using their smarts to trick and take advantage of the other animals, they congregated and came to an agreement. They would render the raven incapable to playing tricks. So they removed its ability to speak and took away its colors. They forced the raven to become a scavenger. Also, the Qallipiliut is a quick one because I'm not 1,000% sure of the details as I have no Inuktitut or Inuit heritage, but it was a tale told to children to keep them off the ocean ice near the shores. The Qallipiliut were beautiful women who would appear in front of a child who had wandered onto the ocean ice and convince the children to give them a hug. They would then pull the children into the water and become ugly witches. The children would never be seen again. I heard this story through a book I read as a kid. A fictional children's book, of course, but taken from Inuktitut/Inuit mythology. The birth of the Tli Cho, Dogrib people. There was a woman with medicine power who practiced medicine, I assume in a bad way, been a long time since I heard the story, who had given birth to a litter of puppies. She was ashamed of them, so she kept them tied up in a sack. When she would leave her tent during the day, the puppies would escape the sack and play in the tent. Every day as she was approaching her tent, she heard, not puppies but children playing in her tent. But no matter how fast she was, by the time she got back into her tent, she could only ever see the last puppy scurrying back into the bag. So one day she decided to play a trick them, and not actually leave but just hang around outside her tent. This time she managed to catch the puppies playing. But they were not puppies, they were children. Most of them made it back into the bag, stayed as puppies who grew into dogs. But the two she managed to catch were human, and remained human as they grew, and were the first Tli Cho people. The Orphan Children, the witch, and the giant at the bridge. Disclaimer: I don't believe this story has any underlying life lessons or history behind it. I was just told this by an elder. One day a Tli Cho brother and sister had wandered away from their camp to play, As they ventured further out, it got dark outside, so they decided to head back home. When they arrived at their camp, they had learned that the Chippewayan had come and slaughtered the entire camp. The two children remained at the camp for days starving and not knowing what to do, when an evil medicine woman approached them. She tried convincing the children to come and live with her, but they recognized her as a witch. They began to run away and reached a chasm with a river flowing through the bottom of it. At the other side of this chasm there was a giant. The giant offered to lay down across the chasm and let the children cross under one condition. The children had to eat his giant snot that he had picked from his nose. Desperate as they were, they ate the snot and were granted passage across the bridge. As the witch approached, the giant presented her with the same offer. The witch scoffed at the offer and berated the giant into laying down across the chasm. As she was halfway across, the giant rolled over and the witch fell to her death. The children were found by the tribe that had killed their parents and were raised by them as Chippewayan. Edit. Also, there was a story about a powerful medicine man who saved his family from a grizzly bear by screaming at it. But that's essentially the whole story, so I won't go into detail. Okay, last one. This is the scary one. The story of Nagha, translated to Bushman. I know of no oral traditional tales based on the Nagha. These stories I've heard from people who have had personal experiences with them. The Nagha kidnapped a young boy from a town called Edzo 40 to 50 years ago. To this day, his family goes to an island and leaves offerings of clothes and food to them. This boy was seen years later. The only Nagha to have been seen wearing a shirt and baseball cap. They had turned him from a regular boy to a Nagha using medicine, Dean magic. A guy I worked with once told me he bought an illegal gun and went far out into the bush to shoot it at trees. He came to a spot on the land where everything was bigger, the trees, the grass, everything. He immediately left. When he came back with his friend, they had found a grizzly bear torn clean into 5 parts: head, body, arms, and legs. With no evidence that the bear had been fed on scratches or meat missing. They noped the fuck out of there, and when he told his grandmother about it, she slapped him and told him never to go back there. It's forbidden land, it belonged to the Nagha. Last but not least, another fellow I had worked with had seen Nagha while he slept in his tent at a hunting camp as a kid. There was a plastic window in his tent. He awoke to the sound of his 4 dogs outside crying. When he looked up at the window, he described the window to be in the wall about 7 to 8 from floor level. He had seen the Nagha looking at him. He was too scared to move, so he stayed still until his brother woke up shortly after. As they went outside to investigate, he noticed the usually aggressive dogs were still huddled in their house crying. He looked out towards the lake and saw Nagha running along the shore in an unusually fast pace. He described it as nearly gliding across the ground while moving your arms and legs in a walking motion. When the Nagha noticed him, it stopped and ran backwards in the same motion and pace. He ran to his parents and woke them up but never saw a Nagha again. That's all my stories. I'm Cherokee, and my family has always had supernatural things going on. Though there are lots of cool scary stories to tell, one in particular popped up in my head when I read the question. The deer woman. My stepmom always said she was Deer Clan. Because of this she never ate any deer whatsoever. I never knew the reason why till after she became extremely ill because my dad tricked her into eating deer jerky one day. She told me that anyone who ate deer in her clan usually gets a warning by getting sick, but if they continued eating deer they would die. This is because the deer woman would come for them because they had done wrong. Then she went further down the road of making me not eat any jerky for a while by saying, every year a person in her clan is taken by the deer woman. This is at powwows, of course, when everyone goes home. You'll hear the next day that someone turned up dead, or went missing never to be found, is what she told me in between moments of dizziness. I was around 7 or 8 at the time, and her being my stepmom, I thought I was gonna die because all I ate was deer jerky that day. I'm Cherokee, so technically Native American speaker. Very technical. However, that has nothing to do with what I'm gonna talk about. That was just obligatory. Maybe it's not appropriate, but maybe it is for this Reddit question. I don't know for sure. I'm Hawaiian, living on the island of Kauai. I've met people on here who've said, Hawaiians are Native American because America controls Hawaii. Sure, buddy. Anyway, there's a lot of supernatural and myth here in Hawaii that I thought I might share a bit of. At least the most prevalent kind that I've heard of. Night marchers. Ghostly ancient Hawaiian warriors. You'll hear drums and see torches when they're near. You can't look at them and you should lie on the ground in respect. They'll kill you otherwise. You still can die even if you follow the recommendations. You're most likely to live if you're of Hawaiian descent. If a ghost warrior is a relative, he can call upon the night marchers to spare a descendant's life, and or show absolute respect. Mermaid of Wailua River. She's very much like a siren of sorts. Wailua River is the biggest, in terms of width, on Kauai. She swims in that river and does what one would expect a siren to do. White Man of Waimea Canyon. Basically a small powder white creature that, at night, stalks people. The only story I've heard of it involved the creature jumping on a guy's back and attacking him. Some sort of night creature I forgot the name of. I think it was a sort of one-eyed beast, but I'm not sure. Mythology story of it involved a hunter who stayed out too late, so he decided to camp. He sets up a fire and sees the creature across from him. The monster just watches him from across the campfire. This particular monster doesn't like light. The hunter had to sit there and keep the flame lit until morning. When the sun began to rise, the monster left. General ghosts of people that haunt heiaus and gravesites. Heiaus are sacred ancient Hawaiian lands that people cannot tread upon. This is a real rule here. Legends ranging from bad luck, being haunted, and more can happen if one treads on sacred land, especially without respect and Hawaiian descent. My uncle once parked by a river and a hotel with a courtyard that was built upon an ancient gravesite. On that courtyard was a tree. My uncle said he saw people in that tree staring back at him. I'm too late, but worth a shot. Do Inuit count? I'm from the northern Canada, Nunavut. There are shadow figures called Tarrainak, or the shadow people. It is believed that you can see them from the corner of your eyesight. When you see a Tarrainak, you would take another look, or you swore you saw something in a form of shadow or a haze. I have heard that they are rather creepy and they give you the feeling of being watched or a slight anxious if some is following you. Another legend is called Ijjirait, translated, people who hide. Ijjirait are entities that you would see in the barren Arctic in the far hills. The Ijjirait have the power to shapeshift into other creatures or people, really similar to the Navajo legend Skinwalker, although never harming Inuit. It is believed that the entities observes Inuit and follow them, but I have never heard Ijjirait harming Inuit. An Inuk elder explained that the Ijjirait can live human lives or imitating humans, or even marry other human beings, while pretending to be Inuit. Camping in the Arctic is creepy, and you would have that expectation that you would encounter entities, especially how the Arctic is so vast and empty. I'm Métis, and an interesting fact that I learned recently was that out in the West, when they went on long buffalo hunts and someone died, it was necessary to bring them back to their home community. So let's just say that Grandpa Jean-Baptiste dies on the hunt. They would bury him in a shallow grave with a marker, and when the hunt was over they would dig him up, put him under all the hides so the smell of dead Grandpa Jean-Baptiste wouldn't be too bad, and they would bring them back to their homeland and give him a proper burial. It was important to them that their dead came back home and were laid to rest with the rest of the family. A lot of them were very Catholic and firmly believed that the dead must be buried on sacred ground or else their souls would wander restlessly. Apparently European settlers and First Nations did not follow this practice. They would bury them where they died. Mexican here. We were tribesmen too, we just built a bit of an empire, so I'll tell you the story of the Chaneque. These creeps are young children with the faces of old men, and not much is known about them. They live in the deserts and jungles of Mexico, and the legend goes that if you see one and follow it, you'll lose either 3 or 7 days. My grandfather always told me that if you lose 7 days to a Chaneque, they follow you home and they try their absolute best to drive you to insanity, depression, or suicide. If you lose 3 days, it means one of two things will happen. The first is that you'll go to war where you will die a brutal but glorious death. The second is that you will be the victim of great tragedy. Lose your life savings, break both legs, lose family, that sort of thing. If you turn your back on the Chaneque, it will transform into a great and terrible jaguar and you'll be devoured. To avoid this fate, you must back away from it, avoiding eye contact at all costs, for if you make eye contact, it will steal your soul. When you can no longer see it, you must pray and pray hard. I'm not quite sure how well this monster is known throughout Mexico or if it's even told the same, but I know that this story has been in my family for generations. My grandfather's grandfather told him. My father's grandfather told him. My grandfather told me. My father will tell my son. And I'll tell my grandson. Yes, in that order. Old traditions. I pray we never see one of these monsters. Edit. I'm Aztec, by the way, or Mexica if you care to split hairs. La Llorona is a story of a woman that lost her children and she is not penitent, crying. La Llorona. In a variation of the tale, she was a beautiful woman married to an unfaithful, very rich man. When she found out he was cheating on her, she went crazy with jealousy, so she tried to hurt him in the worst way possible. She murdered their children. Once they were dead, she realized the terrible deed she had done and then killed herself. Because she killed her own kids, she was denied a place in the afterlife, so she comes back and tries to take children to take the place of her own kids. When we were kids, we certainly never stayed out at night. We ran home as soon as the street lamps were lit. I'm half and half Apache and half Cherokee. I know plenty of lore, but I have a story about coyotes and shapeshifting that I personally experienced if anybody is interested in hearing it. I was living on the res and I was way out in the middle of nowhere, even in res standards. It was nighttime and I was watching the full moon outside. I remember it was so beautifully bright that I could see almost everything. It wasn't uncommon to hear coyotes around here, though you saw them less than you heard them. In spite of this, I saw a few coyotes trotting off a little ways in an opening bathed in the full moon. I remember thinking that they must be up to no good, because coyote is rarely up to any good. Oddly, I didn't hear them even though coyotes are louder and more talkative when traveling at night. Well, I was gazing out the window near our front door when I heard my mother calling me from outside. I specifically remember that she said I had left my backpack in the car and needed to get it to do my homework. I thought nothing of it and began to put on my shoes. Suddenly, every hair on my body stood straight up. The air seemed wrong. It was at this time that my mother walked in from the kitchen and said that dinner was almost ready and I needed to wash up. She saw my shoes on and immediately sensed something wasn't right. She asked if somebody was outside. I said she was. Of course, no, she wasn't. She had been in the kitchen the whole time. I took a last look out the window facing the open field, and I saw a coyote waiting in the light of the full moon. It then stood up on its hind legs like a person and walked into the woods. I would stake my life on this story's authenticity. This is also not the only story I have of my parents' voices speaking to me while I'm alone. Anyway, that's the end of the video. If you've ever had a spooky experience like this, or just want to share something wild, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And hey, if you liked the video, give it a like. It really helps me going. Alright, stay safe out there, have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.